Hello and welcome to another episode of the Small Agency Talk Show. I am your host, Chip Griffin, the founder of the Small Agency Growth Alliance, or SAGA, and I am delighted to have with me two returning panelists who have been here together on this show and are going to bring lots of great content over the next 30 minutes. Karl Sacas of Sacas and Company and Ken Jacobs of Jacobs Executive Coaching and Consulting. Is that
Shall I
right?
weigh in? Jacobs
Yeah, you probably
Consulting.
should, because I
Jacobs
realized just as I'm
Consulting.
starting to talk, I didn't have the exact
I
right
don't blame
language.
you because this is my third and last company name, Jacobs Consulting and Executive Coaching.
Excellent. Well, it is great to have you both here, and since I've screwed up, your business name, Ken, I will let you introduce yourself a little more formally first to the audience and let folks know where they can find you.
Sure. So I'm Ken Jacobs, and I'm with Jacobs Consulting and Executive Coaching. We've confirmed that. I help agencies do what they do, but do it better. We help them with, business development, managing for profit, especially client service, especially leadership and communication skills. And we do that through training and or executive coaching and or consulting. Of late, there's been a lot of growth on the leadership side. Executives of agencies of all size, it seems, want to learn how to be, more effective, more inspiring and inspired leaders. So that's done through leadership or executive coaching.
Excellent. Of course, folks can find you at jacobscom with 2ms.com
Yes.
online.
It's actually free, but they're not together. As you can see.
Now, I confused people. Now you're confusing people, Ken. Karl, let's get us unconfused. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Karl Sakas, agency consultant and coach at Sacas and Company. I help agencies grow profitably, typically when the agency owner wants to find ways to work less and earn more, working with agencies all over the world, drawing on my background in agency operations.
Excellent. And Ken, I think you used the word inspire. I hope we will inspire people over the next 28 minutes or so that we have left, as we're going to be talking about leading the leaders. And this is something that the three of us have talked a little bit about prior to going live here, but it's something that small agencies in particular need to be thinking about. How can you do more as an agency owner to develop the leaders within? And too often, I think we would all agree that we get caught up in the day-to-day firefighting, client service, hunting the next client, and we spend too little time developing our teams in a lot of different aspects, but particularly when it comes to leadership, and I would also say management. And so that's what we're going to talk about. If you are watching this live and you have questions or comments, feel free to share them on YouTube, and I'll be happy to try to incorporate them into the show. If not, I'm sure we'll have enough content to fill the next few minutes. So, Ken, let's start with you. How should agency owners be thinking about this idea of leading the leaders?
Yeah, well, I think it is so vital that agency leaders, agencies of any size, focus on leadership. That notion that you succeed when the people under you succeed. You succeed when the team succeeds, and that a very big part of your job, in addition to growing business and having elated clients and great workplaces, so much of it is about that leadership legacy you leave behind. You can truly affect people. And I think we shouldn't forget that. I always say in the PR cemetery, there's no tombstone that says I doubled the budget. Doubling the budget is great, et cetera. But that's not your leadership legacy. Your leadership legacy is when people talk about how much they learned from you in this area of leading and inspiring people. And it does take thought. It takes knowledge. I'm biased, but I think it helps to have a coach. But ultimately, that's what it's all about. And when you're truly in what I call that leadership zone, when you're leading yourself and others effectively, it does make it easier to do the other things we just talked about, to grow the business, effective client service, profitability. It's easier when people are following you, when they're in the boat with you, when that you've outlined that vision, and they want to get there with you, and they want to play a role in that. So for me, it starts and ends with leadership.
Mm-hmm. And Karl, Ken talked about vision, and I think that's so important. I think one of the challenges probably is that a lot of owners don't have a clear vision themselves, so it's hard to communicate that to somebody else, right? So, I mean, a lot of times agency owners come to me certainly, and they say, "Hey, like they say to you, I want to work less, I want to make more, I want to grow to be, a $3 million, $5 million, $10 million agency, whatever it is." But they don't really have a vision in there other than that. And it takes more than that to be successful, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And some of the pieces there are putting that vision into words. With my upcoming Work Less, Earn More bootcamp, part of the homework before the first session coming up next week is to write what I call an advanced retrospective. That's my visioning tool for people to write about the future, their ideal future, before it's happened, as if it already has happened, so they can work toward it. And people have been sharing comments about the experience, things like, I don't actually think enough about my personal goals and aspirations, but now I can, saying that you need to know what you want in life so you can go get it. And another agency owner mentioned that, she had all these things in her head, hadn't put them into words. And I think the putting it into words is important around your vision, because you can't enlist your team to help you get there if it's all in your head. They can't read your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, some employees can read your mind, most cannot. So get clear on your vision, whether you use the advanced retrospective tool or another to envision things, and then share it, or share a version of it with your team so that they can help you get there.
And at times, it's probably a good thing that they can't read your mind. So I'm not sure we should look at that as a bad thing. So all right. So Ken, as you're talking with an agency owner who says, this is great. I've got a vision. I understand it's important, but how do I make the time for that? How do I, with all of these other things that I have to deal with this fire hose I'm confronting, with, COVID all around us and the economic uncertainty, how do I make time to do these kinds of activities?
Well, the first thing is to acknowledge you decide how you spend your time. If you're spending your time putting out fires rather than preventing them, that's a choice. If you're spending time not taking care of self, not doing self-care, not doing mindfulness, that's a choice. If you put your family on hold for a month or a year or a decade or decades, like some do, that's all a choice. So having that vision allows you to say, what are the choices I want to make and I get to make as I run this company? And many leaders have decided, it's not that I want it all, but I want what's important, right? I want to make a certain amount of money, certain amount of profit. That's great. And I know why I want to make that money. But at the same time, I'm thinking about what's the work environment I want to have. How do my people, how do I get them to really want to come in every day pumped about achieving the vision? And it's also about, what is your vision for the leaders under you? So you decide how you spend your time. And I would, and one thing is to say, the time doesn't manage me. I manage my time. That can be a very big step. And then the next is prioritization. What's really important? And how you spend your day illustrates what's important to you. So you've got to decide what that is. And if you need a little help with time management, you get it. You read the book, or books, So we are much more in control than we might realize. It doesn't always feel that way, especially after the last couple of years, but that is the reality. And so that's where it goes into, you're not only leading the agency, but it starts by leading yourself. And you should have a vision for what you want out of this life. We're hearing a lot about that, the sense of purpose and what role does work have in my life and all that. We're hearing that from Gen Z and younger millennials, but there's no reason why older millennials and Gen X and even boomers, young boomers who are still in the game, think about it. There's still time to create, I think, a life of your dreams and an agency of your dreams.
Right. Yeah, and I like that we've gone from sort of the big picture vision. What do you want to do with the agency? What do you want the agency to do for you? And then start looking at your time as the owner. Because Karl, the one thing I preach to my clients, I'm sure you do as well. Not only is it a choice, but it's the only resource that you can't go out and get more of. Right? There are 24 hours in the day that you have to live. You can't just go and replace that in some other fashion. You can hire people to do all sorts of stuff, but your time is finite, and how you choose to spend it is the most important decision you have for success.
For sure. I worked with a client many years ago in Canada who was running all of the client ad spend through a couple credit cards. Maybe not the best choice there, but my estimate was that he was generating enough airline miles to fly business class to, say, Australia and back every month, but he would never have time to actually use any of that. Mm-hmm. So it starts by getting clear on where you're spending your time now, and then where would you like to spend it? I use a tool I've created that I call the time bucket template, where you list percentages of time on sales, marketing, managing your team, different aspects of client billables, things like that. So where are you spending your time now, percentages, and where do you want to? So for instance, a new client mentioned he's spending almost 50% of his time on business development. And he'd like to get that to more like 25%, in parts that he can spend time more on marketing, more on culture and things like that. So, if you're thinking, I'd never have time to do more of what I want, start by listing where is the time going now. Rough estimates are fine. And then what do you want it to be? And once you know that, then you can dig in, whether you're working with a consultant or coach or otherwise, or doing it yourself, to see, okay, for instance, I want to do less on business development. Who on the team could do that? Or who could take on pieces of that? Or in his case, he's over proposing. He's doing too many proposals relative to realistic opportunities. A client several years ago was like, feeling overwhelmed. I've got 5 proposals to do this week. I said, well, let's talk through them. And ultimately, only 2 of the 5 were realistic. He eliminated the 3 based on we talked through it, and he was able to focus on the 2 that were actually doable. But it starts by looking at where is your time going, where do you want it to go, and then you can enlist your team to help.
Yeah. To that end, I'd like to say, we do need to focus more and think more about the value of time. We so carefully manage our investments and our stock and our this, those kinds of things, and because we expect to get good return, and that's great. But I don't think most of us don't spend enough time managing the most precious commodity, which is time, more valuable than emeralds and diamonds and rubies and stocks and things like that. Why? Because time is the thing that we can leverage to make more money and buy those things if that's what we want, or to travel the world, whatever we want to do. So, and time is the thing that can bring us a life of great satisfaction and fulfillment. So it's the most important priority that we have. It's the most important asset, I should say, that we have. The other thing I'd add is that, when we work with clients who are facing this time management issue, I tell them, similar to what Karl's saying, you've got to do an inventory of time, and you've got to look at the people and the situations that waste your time, that don't bring value. And until you get rid of them, stop them, or greatly reduce that interaction, you're not going to have the time to do what you really want. You've got to get rid of or limit something or some things.
And you have to decide what you want to do as the agency owner. I mean, I always say there's no reason to take on all the risk and stress of running an agency business unless you're getting what you want and doing what you want. And there's really no excuse for you trying to say, I'm not going to figure out how I want to spend my time. And there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, I get asked, what percentage of my time should I spend on business development or client service? I don't know. Tell me what you want to do.
How much you want to, yeah.
Right. I work with agency owners who would, if they could do 100% client service, they would be thrilled. That's really what they love doing. Others, 100%, they'd be rather out there just, eating what they kill and just, going out there and selling as much service as they can. Great. Those are both okay solutions. You need to know what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. And from there, you can then create a plan.
But can I respectfully semi-disagree?
Sure.
Which is that, I most of the clients I work with at the senior level are spending too much time in client service and client work and work that could be delegated down. They've got 20, 25 years experience. A lot of the things they're doing could be done by people on their team with 15 or 12 or 10 years experience. And if you're spending time on a regular basis 2 levels below you, then my question is, well, who's doing your job as CEO? Who's looking at vision? Who's looking at long-term strategy? Do we want to buy? Do we want to get bought in the future? Where will we be a year or 2 or 3 out? What's our SWOT? What are our strategies to leverage the strengths and opportunities and to manage against the weaknesses and threats? That's your job, as well as business development. If you're not doing that and no one else is, something's wrong. So I do think it's important for the agency leader to be focusing on the job that only they can do. And generally, to accommodate that, you've got to delegate and empower.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that entirely, but I do think that a lot of this goes back to what your vision is for the agency, right? And so, there are folks who are running what we would probably all call a lifestyle business, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, there's this misconception that running a lifestyle business is somehow lesser or not as good or something you shouldn't do. If that's what you want to do, as long as you're clear with yourself that that's what you're doing, it's fine. And so you need to understand what that vision is and then understand if you're spending time on client service work, what is that preventing you from doing? And are you okay with that? So it needs to be an intentional decision as opposed to you just didn't get to it, right? Just not getting to it's a bad explanation. If you say, I'm choosing not to do it and I know what the impact is, that's a rational decision at that point.
Makes sense.
So what are some of as we're looking to develop the leaders within, what are some of the skills that we should be looking to develop within them? Some of the specific things that you think you've seen that owners need to be addressing with their team?
Big area is a willingness to find a balance on the leading versus doing side of things. For instance, I ran a marketing association several years ago. 700 members, 100 volunteers, 15 people on the executive team. And what we found was that as people moved up, if they were a committee member, they were primarily a doer. If they became a director leading a particular initiative, maybe it was 20% leading, 80% doing. If they were a VP, it flipped, mostly leading, some doing still. And then if you ultimately were the president, there was still doing that needed to happen, but your primary job is to get results through others. So if someone doesn't have that mindset yet, it's going to be a challenge. And I would also say, separate from specific skills or competencies or things like that, I would consider that anyone you're thinking of promoting from within, it's always easier to promote from within than hire externally, get them integrated. Look for 2 things, and they must have both. One is potential. Do they have potential to move up as a leader and or manager? And the second thing after potential is desire. Do they want to do it? I've worked with some agencies where someone has a ton of potential, but they don't have the desire to be in a leadership role. And certainly you can talk with them to paint a picture for how they might benefit from it based on what you know about their values, goals, and resources. But ultimately, if someone doesn't want to do it, they don't have the desire, that potential doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You have to people have to want to learn and develop, right?
Yeah.
You can't force it upon somebody. I've tried that before with team members. It's a
Oh,
horrible failure.
mm,
If people, I see it with some agencies as they're thinking about their own exit plans, and they start saying, well, I have, Sally's been working for me for 15 years. I'd like her to buy the business. Well, does she want to buy the business, right?
right.
Sally may be perfectly happy to be an employee, but has no desire to be the owner. So maybe you want to have that conversation and understand what they're actually looking for. But I think that's a key part of any kind of professional development that you're doing as an agency owner, manager, leader, is to understand what the people underneath you are looking for out of their career, out of the job that they have with you, and then figure out how you can plug into that rather than forcing them into your own vision.
Right. I mean, ultimately, it's a mutual decision. Like with any important thing, the more you can collaborate with the person or the people who have a stake in it, it's important to do that. I was thinking less about what leadership skills the leader needs, and more how do you prepare that next level of leadership to lead.
Mhm.
And the first thing to do is to create that vision for the agency or the department. And then, think about, okay, is it going to be my vision, or am I willing to make it our vision? And that's a very big step. And not everyone wants to do that. But I think, make that decision.
Mm.
Whether it is your vision or our vision, the person under you, whether it's, your lieutenant or your leader in training, is they need to know what their role is in achieving that vision. People want to know how their work contributes to the greater good and to growth. But whether it's our vision or my vision, it's okay if it's my vision, you want to acknowledge their role in achieving it to the rest of the team, to the person certainly, and to your clients. Let them know that you value that person and their role they're playing in leading the agency. And let them know you believe in them, because when you believe in them, that builds their confidence. And what impact do you think that has on clients and teams' desire to follow them? Right? When you're building a confident leader, people want to follow them because people do follow confidence. It's attractive like a magnet.
Mhm. So I'd like to dig a little bit more into this idea of our vision versus my vision,
Yeah.
because I think this is an important concept. And ultimately, we've talked about how you need to understand what you want as the owner out of your business, and so no matter what the vision is, there's an element of my vision to it.
Oh, it
So
starts with that.
so to me, the question is, how much do you involve the rest of your team, and how do you decide how much to involve the rest of your team in that? And is that purely a function of size? Is it a function of, the age of the agency and how much time your team has been with you? Is it just your personality? How do you decide in a rational way whether to do my vision or our vision?
I don't think it's that everyone on the team gets to contribute necessarily. They do want to
We
buy
don't get to take a
into it
vote
and
and
the
just
role,
decide this is the direction we're going.
right. So I think it really depends on your leadership bench. How many of them? What kind of trust do you have? As Karl said, do they want it? And I think it's like everything, it's about finding balance. I think being willing to make it our vision drives up the collaboration and their engagement and even motivation. But it takes a lot of courage, and it takes a willingness to say, how much am I willing to cede and when? So I think it's very much case by case and personality by personality. I think it's more that than size, though, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I would
Karl?
say this isn't an either or in the sense of does the owner or do the owners figure out the vision, or does the team help? My recommendation would be, as the owner or one of the owners of your agency, you're going to pick the overall direction. You're saying, here's generally where we're going, here's what we want to happen. Then enlist your leadership team and saying, here's where we'd like to go. If you'd like to join me, how can we make this happen? So you're getting some input on the vision, but it's really more about operationalizing it. so that you're getting their buy-in through their involvement more on the how do we make the vision happen, not should we go in this direction.
Right. Yeah, I like that. You set the goalposts, but
Yes.
they can be involved with developing the playbook.
Yes.
To put it
So,
in sort of football terms, American
speaking of
football.
vision, let me share a vision about that, a
Okay.
visual about that,
Ah,
which I got from Rob Flaherty, the chair of Ketchum. It's this notion of, his quote is, create the tight frame, let them paint the canvas. Create the tight frame, let them paint the canvas.
nice.
So the tight frame is either your vision or our vision or somewhere in between, maybe a few core strategies, but they're painting the canvas that's on that frame, right? That they get to figure out how we'll do it and contribute. So that's the painting side, or as my dear friend Joel Curran, who's now with Notre Dame in a very senior communications job there. He says it very succinctly: create the objective, show the direction, and get the hell out of the way.
Mhm.
So I'd like to encourage everyone watching, to think about, are, what are the opportunities? Do I need? Are there some people here where I need to just create the objective, excuse me, show the direction, and do I need to get the hell out of the way in some areas?
Yeah, I think that both of you have introduced some good concepts here, and I think the other thing to think about is something I think you may have mentioned a few minutes ago, Ken, which is what does your bench look like? What does your team
Oh, sure.
look like? Because that's an important factor, and a lot of small agencies, in my experience, I'd be curious what you all think, seem to develop relatively flat structures in one of two directions. They either hire a bunch of junior doers who all report to the owner in the early stages, or they just try to put together a very senior team. So they say, okay, well, this is our selling point. We've just got a senior team, and so they've got everybody at that level. And both of those create some challenges when you're creating vision and getting input, right? The more that you can have a balanced structure to your org chart, the more likely you are to be able to have the right mix of doers and thinkers that can really contribute to that planning process.
If everyone's too junior, no one is giving them guidance and helping them understand how to improve as leaders themselves. They're just sort of throwing them in the deep end and hoping they'll make it. On the other hand, if everyone is senior, there is value to that, but that can certainly hurt profitability. And just because someone has lots of experience doesn't mean they can read your mind on the vision and the direction and what your agency's culture is.
Right. It can hurt if you have an all senior team. It can hurt profitability. It also can hurt the execution because senior people tend to feel that there's a lot of work that's beneath them. And if you don't have someone to do that quote unquote beneath them work, you start to run into problems where maybe they're cutting corners and not doing it to the same level that a
Yes.
more junior person might.
That's why I think this note, which I found helpful, this notion of, if you want to, and even at a small agency, if you are on a regular basis are doing a job that's like we should always be willing to jump in and roll up the sleeves, and client needs, or we have an emergency. Absolutely. Every agency person gets that. But again, if you on a regular basis are doing the job of someone two levels down from you, something is wrong. It's going to affect profitability. It's going to affect your satisfaction. And the same is true for the VPs, and the same is true for the AEs. So, roll up your sleeves when needed, but if it's on a regular basis, something's wrong. The other thing I think about, for some, maybe even many small agency owners, they do eventually want to sell. And so if you want to sell 2 or 3 years out, you've got to start planning. Well, you've got to plan 3 years out.
At least, yeah.
The person who buys you, whether it's another agency of your size or even bigger, they're going to be looking at your leadership bench, and you've got to be able to show them. It may not be everyone, at that next level, but there should be, I would think, 1 or 2 who could lead the agency. And you have to show them how you're grooming them, because at a certain point, if they buy you, you're not going to be there forever. And they want it, they're not just buying what you've created, but they are buying, I think, that next gen.
Right. Yeah, and we could end up going down a whole rabbit hole on M&A because I think there are so many misconceptions that agency owners have about the M&A process. Some good, some bad. But I like your point about sort of being willing to roll up your sleeves. What I always say to my clients is you should be willing to do any job in your agency. You shouldn't be doing every job in your agency.
It's a great quote.
Finding that balance is really what's important. But one of the things I do is I find a balance in how much time we spend on this show, and we are coming up against our time limit here.
I don't know how that happened.
Even though the satellite won't go down and we won't lose signal, I still wrap this show up after 30 minutes every week. So with that, if you can both remind folks where they can find you if they'd like to get more insights from you or perhaps some professional advice. Karl?
Sacasandcompany.com, SAKAS, A&D, the word company.com. Hundreds of free articles and a newsletter that gets great reviews. Good luck out there.
Great. Ken?
And you can find me at jacobscomm.com. And we have a video podcast on there where I interview some great respected leaders from the field. So that's a great opportunity where you can get wisdom from them.
Excellent. And you both are putting out great content. So if you are not already following and subscribed to both Ken and Karl, you should absolutely be doing that. Again, my guests today have been Ken Jacobs and Karl Sacas. If you want a replay of this or any other show, go to smallagency.tv. And I look forward to seeing you all back here again next week.
Thank you.